You might think it upset me that Paul Metzler had decided to run against me, but nothing could be further from the truth. He was no competition for me. It was like apples and oranges. I had to work a little harder, that's all. You see, I believe in the voters. They understand that elections aren't just popularity contests. They know this country was built by people just like me, who work very hard and don't have everything handed to them on a silver spoon. Not like some rich kids who everybody likes because their fathers own Metzler Cement and give them trucks on their 16th birthday and throw them big parties all the time. No, they don't ever have to work for anything. They think they can just all of a sudden one day out of the blue waltz right in with no qualifications whatsoever and try to take away what other people have worked for very, very hard their entire lives. No, didn't bother me at all.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Brick Pit, the podcast you didn't know that you didn't need. I'm Josh, and we are three people who like to talk about movies, television, film, all kinds of neat stuff, but nothing serious, though we do talk about things seriously. So this week I do want to talk about elections, because it's that season in America. And with me, as always, is the candidate for the Rent's Too High party, Adam.
Grover Cleveland was robbed.
Okay. And we also have Sean Hannity's original liberal co-host, Adam. I always do that again, sorry.
That's not getting edited out, by the way.
Oh, and we also have Sean Hannity's original liberal co-host, Jason.
I do want to say, from the guy who unilaterally came up with the "we don't talk about serious things" and just said that earlier, you chose the topic of elections.
Right, but we're not going to talk about actual elections. So that was going to make that very clear.
To be fair, elections aren't really that serious.
Fair enough.
They don't impact anybody or affect
We
anything.
all know that the deep state really controls everything and that there are lizard people underneath the earth. So, which is flat.
And by the way, buy our supplements.
The FDA cannot control these because they're nutritional supplements. So we can put whatever we want in them.
These we manufacture ourselves. They're actually just our poop in capsules. That's 100% organic from our podcast to your mouth. That's
lovely. So if you haven't been turned off at this point, God help you. So, I know we actually do have some international listeners, and so I wanted to do two edits.
Florida is not international.
From my perspective, it is. I won't go there without a passport.
Or shots.
And shots.
Yeah. It's penicillin, but neither here nor there.
Preemptively, right?
I wanted to do two edits, kind of for our international release and one for our domestic release. So this will be for the international audience. So a lot of our listeners from other parts of the world, they say, boy, you guys know a lot about American elections, but you don't seem to know anything about elections outside your own country. To which I'd say, well, we were, raised in public schools in America. And now they'll do the cut for American audiences. So a lot of these people from other countries say that we don't know a lot about their election processes, to which I say, well, we don't have to.
To which I say, there are other countries.
So, Jason, be sure that those go to the right audiences, please. It's incumbent.
Control the internet. Make sure that nobody sees. We're going to geo-lock it on Apple Podcasts so that you can.
We're going to have the Region 1 DVDs.
Listen, Jason already is doing mountainous amounts of work to edit this. The odds that he's going to do any additional work None. No.
These are all true things. Okay, so elections, they dominate the social landscape, especially in America, as especially every 4 years with the presidential election. But there's all kinds of there's high school elections, there's election to local elections, mayoral, but there's typically
America's Got Talent.
in a way.
Eurovision.
That's less fixed, and actually more Americans participate.
I was thinking the Golden Bachelor is
The Pope.
yeah, and that dominates the news. But there's inherent drama in that uncertainty and the race and what people will do for power. So it's great for storytelling and making compelling television and movies about, right? Everything from comedies to satire to drama to television ads. Making fun of the television ads that we have are inundated with now these days. Text, like for the past 2 months, I've gotten text. It's always like not my name. It's like, "Dear Robert, please vote for so and so," and I'm like,
That's your wife's other lover. They just got the numbers mixed up.
possibly. They're only one number off, so
He's on the same family plan with them.
yeah, it's just cheaper that way. It makes sense.
Can't beat them, join them. If you can't beat them, you might as well save a dime or two, right? That's what I'm saying.
I mean, I'm paying for it anyway it goes. Again, like, I don't want to talk about current politics because that's not the scope of this, but especially like our time growing up, that's what we know about, because there was Watergate was like, there's been shenanigans.
Wait a minute, how old are you?
I said that other than when we were young, before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm immortal, man. I was stuffing ballot boxes for LBJ in Texas. Look it up. We can be serious, like from like 1960 before.
Yeah. This won't surprise you at all, but when I was in college, I used to wear a "I like Ike" button every election season. That was my.
That does not surprise me at all, and I probably feel exactly like everyone else that saw it.
Oh yeah. Oh, like you wanted to punch me in the nose if you could get away with it.
I don't even think I could ride. I think just like complete ambivalency or apathy towards like it would almost be like a camouflage. Like you would just disappear from my sight.
Yeah, it worked
like a
pretty well.
T-Rex,
I wasn't typically a voter. So
I did
when I was younger,
history and stuff.
And somebody at work was giving me guff about that. I was like, dude, I'm 40.
When you go back in time,
right? I was like, it obviously had no. I lived in a different state than you.
How dare you not vote 25 years ago?
That's exactly. Oh, I guess you're just being rebellious, and I was like, kind of, yeah. Like,
I didn't want jury duty. Okay,
I have voted in every single dog catcher to presidential election ever, and I have never once been summoned to jury duty.
I've gotten 3 this year.
The second I registered to vote, I got called in.
Maybe I just look too eager. Maybe it's my I has traveled and they've like pulled my name out to keep me off the list, and that guy's no good. I suspect that's what it is.
When they interview me, I just say, I'll say whatever you want me to say for the $5 a day. I mean, who am I supposed to be voting for? That's how I ended up on the OJ.
Right. It is a good question. You should ask. Now, I'm new to being a jury. Am I a juror for the defense or the prosecution? And just keep repeating that. That's how you get out of jury duty.
I got a jury duty summons. Well, like I said, I've gotten 3 this year, but I got a federal one.
Ooh.
Yeah, around summertime. And I was looking at the paper, just kind of trying to figure out what I might get called for. And that's when the Brett Favre case is heating up. And I was like, I am off this jury if I get called for that. Because I could say, hey, yeah, I've lived in this town that Brett Favre's lived in for the past 25 years. Let me tell you my Brett Favre story. Dude did it. Josh can tell you. Yeah, that we know a bunch of people with Brett Favre stories, and not a single one of them good.
He went to church regularly. I mean, I'll give the guy that. I saw him at church every week. He probably needed it, but he was stealing money from poor people.
I was just going to say to allegedly pull money out of the offering plate, but but you know, I was going to pull that punch.
He flew in Nick Lachey to perform for one of his daughter's birthday parties one year, and I had a lady I work with. Kids went to the party, so whatever.
Josh is upset that he wasn't invited to see Nick Lachey.
I camped outside of the Favre compound for days, and then I found out Nick Lachey was there. It was
I just want to say, in context, it made it sound like you camped outside because that girl's daughter was there. But
okay, so I was correct in the way I said.
Prank call, wrong number.
This year, my goal is to get canceled.
Speaking of elections.
Speaking of being a creep, let's talk about tropes in election films. 90% of the time, there's a candidate who is a creep. It's weird how, like, I wonder if they started doing that in movies first and then, like, you know, politicians just kind of followed suit, or
did life imitate art, or did art imitate life?
It's
I don't know. If you ever saw Adway Stevenson, I think that answers itself. But
Spiro Agnew was known.
Not. I mean, politics aside,
Spiro Agnew was a good-looking dude.
No, it's weird how many weird named people have run for office. You know what I mean?
Well, isn't like Biden's middle name like Robinette?
Yes. Millard Fillmore. Like, what kind of name is that? Rutherford B. Hayes. How many Rutherfords have you met in your entire life?
3.
How many Rutherfords in? Well, you live in where you live. That's probably true, but you know,
what's Mitt Romney's real name? Isn't it weird too?
I don't know Mitt Romney's real name, but it wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, it can't be.
But Mitt. I mean, that's the other thing is the
Raphael Cruz.
You've got the weird names, or then you got nicknames like, I'm Mitt. What?
Yeah, Harry S. Truman's middle name is just S. He doesn't have a middle name.
Oh, it's Willard. I would go by Mitt too.
Willard.
So you're either a creepy dude with rats, or you're Mitt.
Anyway,
so there's
candidacies and NPR hosts. That's if you have a weird name.
The candidate's a creep, or there's some kind of like something skeleton
nefarious
in the closet that has to. And so, I mean,
we're gonna have a hard time on this episode. I can already tell you, like, the things I've stopped us.
Let's start with Huey P. Long.
Well, I do think, when you talk about that, it's certain areas have their own politics involved with it. Like when Hurricane Katrina came through and caused all that problem, and they started complaining about the levees and all that kind of stuff. So what? Because they were siphoning money from the maintenance of the levees to other projects like building an island in the middle of Lake Pontchartrain to build a casino. Things like that, and you have to explain to people, it's like, that trope of the crooked politician, that's a prerequisite in southern Louisiana.
Yeah, like not to tick off anybody in Louisiana, but they're pretty proud of their corrupt politicians, like culturally.
That's what I'm saying. So like, and like you have Tammany Hall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another good example.
Right there, or the Chicago Machine.
So here in Alabama, there was Boss Hogg. And his exploits with the Duke boys.
That's right.
I think they may have been royalty or something.
Yeah,
it was Georgia, man.
Was it Georgia?
It was Georgia.
I thought it was Arkansas.
It was anywhere in the South. we all had
all of us.
Yeah, we all had the Duke boys in our family. We were all the what were the cousins' names? We were all the
Coy and
Vance to somebody's Bo and Luke. If you grew up in the South, and not only are we regionalizing ourselves, we're really aging ourselves because anybody born after 1985 is like, what? Everybody watched Dukes of Hazzard. It wasn't just us. We just lived it. It was like we couldn't turn it off. It was like Cops. You turn off the TV and the siren's still going. You're like, oh, here comes the Cops camera crew.
I knew at least 4 different people in high school with some kind of crappy beater car that had the Dukes of Hazzard horn on it. Like a Chevy Nova, with the Dixie horn. And a gun rack in the back.
Let's be honest, they didn't buy that because of the Dukes of Hazzard.
Right.
Just a byproduct.
The Dukes of Hazzard was more of a mirror of reality than an influencer.
Did the Dukes of Hazzard use that song first? Or did
this is on TV? What are you talking about? Yeah. We don't get but one channel out where I live, and I didn't know that was on the television.
So what other kind of tropes do we run into in the elections?
The opposite, right? The overly moral, perfect guy.
Oh, the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yeah, the flawless candidate.
Yeah, that's really good.
Or his foibles they're not real foibles. They're like humanizing foibles. Like, oh my God, he also swears under his breath.
Well, there's like the Joe Schmo, gets elected, and boy, he's going to clean up this town. But
Dave,
oh my gosh,
is that right? That was on the list. I think I haven't seen that movie in a long time. But isn't that just a good guy? There is that trope of just the good guy becomes president, and he deserves to be it, and everybody likes.
Yeah,
him.
kind of Dave, but I think there was a little more to Dave. Wasn't he like pretending to be the president?
I think that was.
He was the movie doppelganger.
Yeah, doppelganger. Yeah, that's it.
We scoured the country and we found somebody that looks exactly like the president, and he happens to be a great guy. Well, and then you put him in a totally compromising position? That's terrible.
They call that pulling a Princess Amidala. That's what you.
Yeah.
My bodyguard got shot and I feel terrible about it. That was a totally predictable outcome. Like, why would you feel bad about it? That's why you did it.
Their whole purpose was to be murdered.
I think Adam just revealed something about himself there. It's like, no empathy for people just because they died.
Wait, is that a thing? The other version of that is the absolute buffoon who is not evil, but just dumb. Like the plot of it is going to be like the people around them having to endure this stupidity, but everybody in the public thinks he's a genius, but everybody that works with him thinks he's an idiot.
Yeah, the empty suit kind of thing.
Yeah. You see that with like Veep and shows like that, and which is an excellent show. And it's not necessarily an election, I guess it's more about politics at the highest level. I guess it's kind of expansive. Like your whole thing about, why does it create the drama or create the tension? A lot of people compare politics or political movies to sports movies. But I think a better analogy, at least in my mind, is a political movie to a courtroom drama.
Yeah.
Is because in sports, it's there's the scoring element or whatever, but most political movies don't come down to the wire.
One may argue that courtrooms are political movies.
Yeah. But not
I get the sports analogy because people do like underdog stories in both genres. And some of them do come down to last minute because the election is essentially the ticking clock of the final inning or final quarter of a football game or something like that. So you do have some of those comparisons, and you do have a lot of the same things like, everything looks good, but something happens that compromises the main, guy.
October surprise versus the Hail Mary, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. What's weird is sometimes they try to shoehorn, like build a movie around an event, then it just doesn't work. And something I was thinking about when I was, and I almost did this movie, but it is worth mentioning just because it's like, it's not a good example, is the Kevin Costner film, I think it's 2008, called Swing Vote. And it was obviously like conceived after the 2000 elections, right? So Kevin Costner's this schlubby dude. The only thing he's got going in his life is his fifth grade daughter, right? And she goes to vote for him or something, but he would like the power goes out, and so his ballot's not counted, and wouldn't you know it, it's a tied election. So it's his vote is the deciding vote, and he has to recount it. I'm like, this, like, none of this would work this way. The whole thing was a brick pit. Like, the whole premise, I was like, it was so contrived so that they could have schlubby guy like being pandered to by the two different candidates that were obviously Bush and Gore. It was like,
that does sound stupid.
It was, yes. Like, it was, I was angry the whole time I was watching. I was like, this is.
And it has nothing to do with the plot of the movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of the understood. I'm always angry.
He's like the Hulk.
Yes.
About, I guess it's been 8 or 9 years ago now, there was a municipal election in one of the suburbs around Washington, D.C., where it was a tie. And they actually, I'm sorry. It was the state legislature in Virginia. Tens of thousands of votes. And it came down, it was exactly a tie, and they did it by coin toss. That's how they decided it, which is wild to me. But, I don't know. Maybe they should have just pulled a name out of a hat and been like, this person decides. And that would it would have been more interesting anyway, right?
It would probably be more interesting than
that movie.
A game of horse would have been more interesting.
That's funny.
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm not a Kevin Costner hater. Like, I like Kevin Costner. I'm a tin cup enthusiast. I like The Postman. But man, that might have been why I was angry, because I was like, I like Kevin Costner, and he is doing this terrible movie.
Terrible thing, yeah.
What? Stop, Kevin.
Someone's fooled you.
No, Kevin, no.
What are you doing? That's not how any of this works.
Is this a Bill Murray Garfield situation? Is that what's going on? Did you get the Coen brothers mixed up? Is that what happened?
Yes.
Brevity is the soul wit, Josh. That's
I try to be droll.
Yeah.
I do think it's weird. Most election films do have to have a point of view. Again, we're American, so we're talking about American elections. I mean, do you think that there's like a subtext or a ploy to swing political opinions, or
no? People are no. I mean, like movies that are made for that purpose, right? Like. Mm-hmm. Yes, but
Triumph of the Will.
No, yeah, a Birth of a Nation, but like Air Force One or something like that, or
I don't think Air Force One is an election movie.
No, or even more like historic, like famous ones, like we try to think, like Primary Colors, for example. Like what you're going into. Nobody's going into that being like, I wonder who the candidate they're talking about is or whatever, right? If you go to a movie theater and a big blockbuster, well, historically, I don't know what it is these days. Like everything's different these days, right? I can't think of a movie that would appeal to both sides in the current political climate that has existed in, I don't know, 20 years probably.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Since you put that time frame on it.
Pre-Bush, probably pre-George W. You could make a political movie. They're almost always ostensibly from like the left point of view, but it's always like a center left with a strong militaristic Democrat. That's kind of the balance they do. The walk they walk.
They were JFK.
They were JFK. Everybody was JFK or Reagan or Eisenhower, right? That was the model. What at the time would have been considered a non-controversial type figure. And that was that. And then you could go see it and people wouldn't on either side be pissed about it. No more. To your question today, like, could you even make a move? No, it's going to be 100% hyper-partisanship. There's no political thriller type movie that comes out today that doesn't have partisanship to it for one side or the other. And does it have an impact? Absolutely not. Because it's always speaking to the choir.
Right, you're preaching to the choir.
There's nobody going in there going like, well, geez, that opened my eyes. Like, even old Michael Moore's crap like that he made for years. Right? There was a period where you could find quote unquote centrists in a Michael Moore screening. And now you're never going to find that. You're never going to.
Yeah,
always be
I probably in Roger and Me was Roger and Me was. It had all the kind of deceptive practices of Michael Moore, but it was. I think the subject was something that is universally it.
What is? I don't know. I don't even know what that is. I've never even heard of it.
It was his first film, I think. Was
it?
Yeah. It was a.
Yeah, it's about the
Chrysler
CEO of GM.
GM, that's it.
Yeah, who had shuttered a bunch of factories and all that kind of stuff. So
so it was it was very pro-union, but like the whole thing is him trying to get an interview with the president and stuff, and him doing his kind of
shtick
gotcha journalism. But again, the subject matter is like people losing their jobs in the Rust Belt and the kind of and this is like late 80s, early 90s. So
late 80s,
it wasn't a hyper partisan subject,
right?
As his later films would
became,
like Fahrenheit 9/11 or whatever, like that.
Right.
Well, let's be honest. Like Mother Jones fired him for being too radical left.
I remember, like, what was it, TV Nation or whatever? Man, like, so in college, we'd watch it, and because, like, my friends were, like, super into it. I just kept going, like, I don't think that's right. Like, I think he's misrepresenting that. And I was really popular.
And here's the thing, like, he understands film.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what makes him dangerous. He understands how to manipulate film. He understands the Kuleshov effect very well.
Mm-hmm.
His only film that he admits is fiction, Canadian Bacon, love it.
Yeah, Canadian Bacon is a fantastic film. Really, really funny. One of John Candy's last films, probably. Yeah. Got Rhea Perlman in it.
Kevin Pollak.
Yeah.
Alan Alda. Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah. And again, like Roger and Me is it's not the greatest documentary, but it's I can see why I put him. Certainly he's competent, and we've talked about Michael Moore. Like he's a competent filmmaker. It's just he's not a great documentarian from our perspective. Anyway, speaking of documentaries, didn't you watch a documentary for this, Jason?
Actually, I misread the topic title.
Oh,
and so
as we often do.
Just pass on mine. That was my fault. I should have realized it was a little bit blue for us, but it is what it is.
I mean, Striptease is a classic documentary. It's probably one of the best election documentaries I've ever seen.
Porky's is a very political film.
Yeah.
No, I watched the 1993 documentary, The War Room.
In the 1960s, D.A. Pennebaker's Don't Look Back and Monterey Pop captured the legends of rock and roll. Now, D.A. Pennebaker and Chris Hedges bring us the making of the first president from the rock and roll generation.
somebody who's been through a lot of tough elections, James Carville is known as the Raging Cajun in the business.
So let me tell you what's at stake in this election. It's about George Bush and the whole sleazy little cabal of them. You're going to get tax breaks for the wealthy. You're going to get a guy that doesn't know what a grocery store scanner is. I'm getting sick and tired. I am every single night hearing one of these carping little liberal Democrats jumping all over my you know what.
I'm George Stephanopoulos. I'm Director of Communications.
Bush was on the defensive. Another good night for Bill Clinton. 3 debates, 3 wins. I guarantee you that if you do this, you'll never work in Democratic politics again.
If we cannot believe anything he has said about his past, how can we believe anything he's saying about the future?
Well, I think Mary Mallon's got a good career in fiction writing when this is over.
I'm lost. I don't know where I'm supposed to go next.
Turn Perot off. I don't want to look at it. How are you? Nice to see you.
Stay focused. Talk about things that matter to people.
We love Hillary's new patriotism thing.
It's the economy, stupid.
Speak from your heart tonight. I mean, that's all that matters.
Read my lips.
It's the most famous broken promise in the history of American politics.
Let them spin. We will win.
He is so yesterday, if I think of an old calendar, I think of George Bush's face on it.
Landslide.
I like the way this thing feels.
They changed the way campaigns are won. The War Room, from D.A. Pennybaker and Chris Hedges.
This is just the most American thing you can do.
Now, this is a movie that was directed by D.A. Pennebaker, which we've talked about him before. He is kind of a groundbreaker in documentaries, especially music documentaries. He did the Monterey Pop Festival documentary. He did Don't Look Back in Anger, the Bob Dylan documentary, the last Z Stardust concert film with David Bowie. He did that. So he was well known, well respected, and he was actually asked to do a documentary on the 1992 Bill Clinton presidential campaign.
It's the economy, stupid.
Well, and Clinton was the rock star candidate. So
Yes.
he was young and hip and coming out to the Fleetwood's Max like the kids liked at the time.
Well, yeah, he did Arsenio Hall. He was on MTV playing saxophone. Yeah,
answering questions about boxers or briefs, and that was such a scandal. And now it's like
I smoked, but I did not inhale.
I long for the days when a question like that was like, "Oh, how impertinent of you!"
Right.
Like now, that's like the opening line at the conventions is whether
There's
you wear
too
boxer
many
briefs.
outside thoughts or inside thoughts that are now outside spoken in politics now that I
in general.
Yeah. Overall, yes, definitely.
I wanted you to talk about yours first because Adam did bring up Primary Colors, which is
kind of the fictionalized
based on
version
the
of the same
same
thing. Yeah.
event. It's a fictionalized version, but I can't remember who wrote the Primary Colors book.
So remember, it was anonymous. That was the big when it came out. That was the big who wrote Primary Colors.
Yeah, but it's all.
And it turned out to be like exactly who you thought it would be. Like, I forget. Like, it doesn't matter. It was some high level person that everybody's like, oh yeah, that's definitely who wrote it.
It was Al Gore.
Hillary Clinton.
When he was big. It's Bill Clinton.
my life on the campaign trail.
That's a pretty good impression. That's one of your better celebrity voices.
Unfortunately, that's his George H.W. Bush impersonation. So.
Hey, just got it backwards. That's okay.
That was my Millard Fillmore. What are you talking about? That was my John Quincy Adams.
Yeah.
JQA.
Doesn't have enough Boston in it, buddy. You gotta go. You gotta go draw deep for that.
We need a president that. Well, I guess we had a president with super Boston accent with the Kennedys.
Kennedys, yeah. In recorded times, yeah.
So anyway, this starts off at the New Hampshire primaries and goes all the way till election night. Kind of the main players really in this, though, are James Carville and George Stephanopoulos. Carville is the campaign manager. Stephanopoulos is, I believe, like communications manager or something like that for the campaign. You do see a little bit of Bill Clinton and also the other people that were kind of orbiting him in that campaign.
Like
at the
Jennifer
time.
Flowers.
Yeah. Like they start off like with that very early on.
Well, all the bimbo eruptions started very early on.
Yeah. Well, what they really started doing it because that New Hampshire, I don't think it's that way anymore, but when, at that time, New Hampshire was the first primary in the country. So it was very important. It was felt to be kind of like a gauge on how the rest of the primary would go. So a lot of people would drop out of the first one. It was kind of like going in the Wayback Machine on this because, like, oh yeah, Paul Songus was there.
Jeez.
And it's funny to hear like Carville and Stephanopoulos just talk crap about Songus.
Yeah. So Carville is like a living Muppet, living Louisiana Muppet. Like he is every coon ass you could ever meet rolled into one and then like thrown in a gunny sack and shook it up to get all mad.
Yeah, he's a Southern Louisiana stereotype, just like, battered and deep fried for you. Like he's
and no matter what side of the aisle you're on, it's like he's a character. Like he's crazy. And Stephanopoulos was like the wonderkin. He was the young, and now he's like, he still looks like a kid, but he's got to be really old. He's like 30 years older now. So do the math.
Like I said, it starts off with the primary, and it does also interlace the Jennifer Flowers story. Like her press conference is part of the footage in there. And a bit I do like, though, is like one of the reporters just asks her, did the governor wear a condom? And, of course, you see her get all offended and the lawyer step in and he's like, that's a terrible question. But then there's just like this dude in the background, like a security guard or something like that. And you see him kind of lean in and he's like, I want to know the answer to that question. Yeah. But it goes into you get to see how the sausage is made for a political campaign, especially how Carville does one. It highlights kind of like his ability to think and do things, but you also see kind of like his conniving nature a lot in it. Like they're just setting up like how they're going to attack George Bush. Is like, oh, we'll take that we'll take that footage of him saying "read my lips, no new taxes," and we're gonna do this to it, and then the second commercial will have this, and we'll just keep attacking and all that kind of stuff on it. You see just real vicious nature that he has and that he brought to that campaign. There is one part that it's my favorite part of the film. They had found footage from a news report in Brazil of Bush Quail 92 signs being made at a printer down in Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, somewhere like that. Carville's sitting there, is Portuguese, tell me what they're saying. And they're trying to kind of half-assed interpret what the Brazilian newscaster is saying. And so he's calling this newspaper contact he has. It's yeah, they're printing materials down in Brazil. That's money, that's $100,000 they could have spent in America for American jobs. And he's talking to other people later. It's yeah, tomorrow the headline's going to be this. He was laying out how he was going to feed this information to the news. And then one of their own people's just talking about, yeah, we're looking at that. That's got footage from the Republican primary or convention. So it might actually be for the convention and not his actual campaign here. And you see Carville just get upset. Oh, no, that's still, he just keeps pushing on it. And then he gets a call back from that newspaper we used to talk about. It's yeah, some guy said that he did it by himself. It had nothing to do with the Bush Quayle campaign. He did it himself, and it was for the primary or for the convention. And Carville just gets upset and just starts going off about how the fact that the newspaper's being unbiased. You're gonna throw this every time this Jennifer Flowers says something. It's in 20 newspapers. Like he just loses it.
What is the matter today? Well, every time somebody farts the word draft, it's on the front page of the paper. It's not. Okay, I'm gonna see how many stories there are on the draft and how many stories there are on George Bush's election year promising. Okay? No, a lot more. A lot more. Okay, I'm going to go back and see. George Bush mentioned the draft one time. He mentioned it one time. And let's see how many stories that was written on the draft. Oh, okay. Well, you said if you want to say something, then say something. I'm giving you an example of there's a lot more fascination with the, quote, draft issue, unquote, or Jennifer Flowers than there is with George Bush promising $16 zillion more than he could ever spend in an election year. I believe that on any number of things that we are held to a different standard. I think it is absolutely ludicrous that no one ever asked George Bush about Iran-Contra. Two cabinet secretaries saying Bush was lying. No one ever said a damn thing. You get this memo from Baker about him knowing about Iraq having chemical weapons going. And then there's no follow-up because, God, you can't ask Jim Baker a question. You must want to be, this man is down, he's beyond being questioned. He gives everybody tickets to the opera. We can't question him, This is not directed anymore at the Washington Post. I've had this conversation with everybody.
And I find it amazingly hilarious.
Well, and Carville's sharp tongue has not dulled over the years.
No, not at all.
He's got no, punches pulled this go around.
Well, he also, I think he was at LSU or something as an adjunct, and he got in trouble because he was, basically, dogging out the students and stuff.
Yeah.
They called them
idiots,
all kinds of. Yeah. And it's one of those things you knew who he was. It's not like he was an unknown factor.
Yeah.
So that's like going to a Don Rickles show and he makes fun of you and you're like, well, I can't believe that guy. It's that's his whole shtick is. So the administration, the people taking the class, no one should be surprised that James Carville is James Carville.
No, not at all. Not at all.
That's a feature, not a bug. So
there's a new documentary out about him and his wife, right? That came out.
Oh yeah, that was the other crazy thing is that his wife was running the Bush.
She was
campaign.
deputy.
Right.
Yeah, she was the deputy campaign manager for Bush.
Mary Madeline.
Madeline. Yeah, Madeline. Yeah, they got married the next year.
They got Mary Magdalene from the Bible. No, yeah, and so they were always really interesting to have, and the TV loved having them on together because they were married. And
I mean, they even talk about that in the film, the fact that it's well, have you seen her much? Oh no, she's in Bush's campaign doing that stuff there, and I'm here in Little Rock. Yeah, it was madness. I mean, again, I don't think you would see something like that in modern day politics.
I don't know, George Conway and
I think a lot of the ground was laid for modern day politics with that 92 campaign. I think that the legacy of that, as far as campaigning goes and storytelling about it, it's legendary for a reason.
Yeah. It was a turning point. But it was a turning point. So here's the thing. Let's contextualize this. Everyone thinks their time is the most interesting, right? Because they're in it. But if we look, contextually through history, people want to say that Carville made nasty politics.
No, he did not.
But that is not right. You guys are
we talked about LBJ before,
right? LBJ, or I mean the things they said about FDR and the wheelchair, it's all
they said that guy was in a wheelchair,
or Lincoln, back, the
newspaper. That guy was in a wheelchair.
But in quote unquote modern politics, meaning turn of the 21st century, they blame him for going low.
No,
right?
But here's the thing, and this will play into the film I want to talk about because it's all very tied into each other because it was very much the zeitgeist of the time. That campaign was, and I will get political here for a second. How Trump went on all these podcasts. That's the future now.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the way every candidate from now on is going to probably have to go on Joe Rogan.
And our podcast.
So
we were the kingmakers. That's really where
But he went on
Miss Harris failed
like Barron told him to go on all these people I'd never heard of, all these young people. That demographic turned out for him. So that kind of seeing the writing on the wall is what Carville and Stephanopoulos and all of them saw. They saw, let's get him on Arsenio Hall. Let's get him
MTV. Yeah.
Let's get him on MTV. They were doing the same things for that. Rock the Vote. Yeah. It was a totally different kind of campaign.
Obama did that in a lot of ways with the internet. He was the first candidate to really seize internet culture.
Yeah.
In a way, Obama that was his famous whatever. And I think you're right. I think the podcast sphere, I don't know what the word for that is, but that medium is the medium of the moment, and they seized it and they were able to capitalize upon it.
Well, yeah, you always have those changing dynamics. They always talk about the Nixon JFK debate is the first televised debate and how that changed.
Because he looked sick.
Yeah, because he looked, and then you have in the 72 election, Nixon went on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In.
Yeah,
talk it to me.
Exactly, which is totally out of place on considering their thing. But yeah, you see stuff like that, and then you had McCain and all that stuff going on SNL.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you see this broadening and this changing dynamic of how they use media, and there's actually a bit in there where they're sitting around a table and they're on a conference call with the woman who's doing their TV commercials, and them just sitting there. It's okay, do this, and them cutting stuff. Okay, we need to get down to 30 seconds. Let's cut this line. Let's rework this line, and just talking about how quickly they were able to put out a commercial.
And then, okay, let's do that. But let's just get this spot produced.
Hey, I'm sitting in the studio. I'm doing it. Talk to you later.
Bye. I bet you one thing. I just want to say one thing. If you need to call Mandy back and tell her to be sure that she gets that read. No, not with me. To be sure she gets reading all that things 3 times. One day, in my time, in my political career, every time that you suggest something to a media person, their first reaction is, we can't do that. It's every time. Well, we can't do that.
Well, it doesn't take long to get to the second time, no?
Yes, I know. But just one time, I would just like to say, let's do that. And say, fine, that's easy, man. What do you need? Here it is.
James, this idea was suggested, a half hour ago?
This is pretty good.
The script has been made in 20 minutes.
She's in the studio.
The studio
producing it. It's 45 minutes.
Take it back. We've gone from a half hour to a concept to a spot. What the fuck do you want?
Okay. I'm a
I suppose we're on the satellite.
We haven't figured it out yet. You haven't asked, but it'll probably be at the focus group tonight at 6 o'clock.
And most campaigns, it takes them 2 days, to get a spot out and run it. So, okay. You're right.
What was the last
Mandy's
time
great. Mandy's great.
Just right after a debate or a primary or something like that, and just able to kind of cut that time down by days. We just made a 30-second commercial the next day after a primary. It usually takes people 2 or 3 days to get this stuff done.
So this is where I want to sound like an old man. This
is where?
Well, one of many places. When Nixon Kennedy did their debate on TV, there was a pretty significant contingent of folks, old people then, who were turned off by that.
Mm-hmm.
They said this is not the proper medium for these things. It should be on the radio or whatever. And then as each sort of slide down that path, like you mentioned, you just kind of get a great history, like the Laugh-In and the SNL and Arsenio Hall, which the point of that is to make these figures look human, right? To bring them down to the common man's level.
Bring the gods down from Olympus.
Right. I think part of that is it also dumbed down our politics. It it made.
What do you
it
mean
made
having
being,
Cardi
like,
B do a concert before your big political speech is dumbing down?
or and just play into the like,
or having Kid Rock come out and Hulk Hogan?
right? Yeah, it's just like, I mean, I know it's where we are. There's no going back, right?
No.
But it just feels like it's an inexorable spiral to like the lowest possible form of communication.
Well, it's the thing is, like, to win a campaign, you have to be on the cutting edge of culture.
Yeah.
Our culture is dumbing down, so politics is.
I like my hat idea. I think we should just put every American's name in a hat. We pull a name out, and that guy chooses, or gal. That person chooses.
So anyway,
that's what we're going to
do. The keeping up with new technology and cultural trends and stuff is like, was it Truman that did the whistle stop?
Yeah. One of many, but yeah.
But I mean, I guess in the late 1800s,
it was a big deal.
Giving your stump speech from the back of a train so you could hit more cities was like
revolutionary.
There's probably people go, whoa, what the heck? He was in 4 cities in 7 days.
Well, so I think it's John Tyler who campaigned direct. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's who it was the first. Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Who was Tippecanoe in that? I can't remember. It was whoever the presidential candidate was that was Tippecanoe, because Tyler became president because that guy died. But anyway, they were writing direct appeals to like local newspapers advocating for themselves. Prior to that, candidates did not campaign for themselves. That was seen as gauche. They would have surrogates go out and talk them up. So, to your point about elections distancing themselves from the gods, they were put on a pedestal, and it was seen as unsavory to talk about yourself and try to convince people to vote, to solicit votes. Whereas, here we are now. But you're right. Yeah, like the Whistle Stop Tour.
I did radio.
Radio. Now it's all about how, like, who, I think it was Carville that actually was the one. Nah, this is before his time.
Who do you want to have a beer with?
Who do you want to have a beer with?
I think that was Carter.
Carter. Yeah, that tracks. Who would you rather have a beer with, right? And,
who is still alive at the recording of this?
Yeah. God bless that poor man.
Good Lord.
Here's the thing with I would like to have a beer with that guy. There's a lot of people I'd like to have a beer with that I do not want running the country.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have a beer with Henry Rollins, but I don't want him handling policy.
Yeah.
He just punched Vladimir Putin in the face.
Okay, never mind. He got my vote.
Do you know about 2 beers and a puppy?
Oh, we don't want to know about your weird internet videos you found.
All right. So when you're thinking about someone in your life, the question you would ask is this somebody I would have 2 beers with this person? And then the next question you'd ask is, would you allow this person to look after your puppy over a weekend? And some people are no and no, and those are people you shouldn't be around at all. And some people are yes and no. They're great. They're fun to be around, but they're cautiously trusted, right? And some people are no and a yes. They're absolutely no fun to be around, but they're super responsible and you would absolutely trust them. And then the last group is, of course, yes and yes. People that you would enjoy hanging out with, but also would trust to do something important. Just a sociology thing. 2 beers and a puppy, like to put people into categories. So you guys are no and no, just so you know.
I go by the 2 guys, a girl, and a pizza place test. If you like that show, I stay away from it.
So I want to just say, just to finish off talking about the War Room, if you've ever watched the IFC documentary Now TV series, Bill Hader and Fred Armisen, they do like this fantastic parody of this movie called The Bunker, where it's like some local election, like mayor or something, like, or alderman or something like that. But Bill Hader wears the like purple and green striped shirt that Carville wears.
And,
in that.
Yeah, and Fred Armisen is the George Stephanopoulos character. Yeah, documentary Now is amazing, but that's neither here nor there. So I do want to talk about one more film, and it's so weird because like this is like we've been joking all night about like art imitating life, life imitating art. This is like slap in the middle of that. So the film is the 1997 film Wag the Dog.
There's a crisis in the White House.
What's the crisis?
And the president's top advisors have been called together.
Oh, jeez.
The sexual misconduct occurred inside the Oval Office. With the election only days away, how much will this scandal affect the outcome?
The president spent the weekend pressing the flesh. He wasn't campaigning, he was dating, actually.
Now, Washington's top spin doctor.
We can distract the press for 11 days till the election. I think we got a chance.
Has an idea.
We can't afford a war.
We're going to have the appearance of a war.
But he can't pull it off without Hollywood's top producer.
Do I know you? We have some mutual friends in Washington. Why come to me? We want you to produce. You want me to produce your war? Not a war. It's a pageant. We need a theme, a song, some visuals. We need, it's a pageant.
New Line Cinema presents.
How close are you to this? What do you want the kid to say?
All the spectacle.
I know we're all concerned for the president.
I know we're all concerned for the president.
I know that we are all concerned for the president.
He didn't sell the line.
All the drama.
The president's going to go to war with Albania in about 30 minutes.
Albania's hard to run.
These are chips.
We need it for the arm position on the screen. It'll be a kitten. We'll punch it in later, right?
And all the effects of real war.
Okay, put the village behind her.
Give me some sound of screaming.
Without the casualties.
America has seldom witnessed a more poignant picture of...
They used the same process with the last Schwarzenegger movie. You're the man.
Albania, Albania.
That rhymes.
I can't believe that we forgot a hero. It was like we sent him the Christmas card and we left out the what do you call it? Fruitcake. There you go.
Sergeant Schumann, if I may, welcome to history.
How are you?
Anybody want a beer? Because I could party.
When it's cooking, it's cooking.
From Academy Award-winning director Barry Levinson.
When this goes national, I get to put it on my resume?
Actually, no.
What could they do to me?
Take him home to your house and kill you.
Academy Award winner Dustin Hoffman.
This is politics at its finest.
Academy Award winner Robert De Niro.
How would you like an ambassadorship? That's my payoff. Hell, I just do it for a story to tell. Oh, no, you couldn't tell anybody. Listen, I'm just kidding. No, you couldn't tell. No. It's just it's a pageant. It's a pageant. That's what it is.
Wag the Dog.
When the fit hits the shan, somebody's going to have to stay after school.
It's directed by Barry Levinson, co-written at least by David Mamet, music by Mark Knopfler, starring Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, Anne Heche, Willie Nelson, Dennis Leary's in it. William H. Macy shows up for a scene. Kirsten Dunst shows up for a scene. And I said Anne Heche, yeah. So it is...
Does it have Anne Heche in it?
I think it has Anne Heche in it.
I don't want to watch this unless it has Anne Heche in it.
It may be the Hechiest film. It's part of my Anne Heche tetralogy.
On the Heche meter, what is this rating?
A full Ellen.
Nice. Do you watch it every Heche-vember? Is that when your Heche season is? Is that?
I watch it with my Haitian friend.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so this film is obviously inspired by the Clinton White House. And then it would go on to mirror later scandals of the Clinton White House, which is funny. So the story is, and it's a brilliant satire. Like I said, it came out in 97. I was 19, maybe 20. So I don't think I had voted in a presidential or could have voted in a presidential election. I was kind of a hippie. So like, I did not like this movie when I saw it at the movie theater because I was like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Watching it as a bitter old man, this is literally in my top 10 films now.
Hold on. You said this movie was 97?
Yeah.
So, yes, you would have been able to vote in the 96 election.
But he says he doesn't vote.
But I didn't vote in the 96 election.
No, but you said you wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah, because Perot dropped out. I didn't.
Yeah.
Then he dropped back in, but I just...
Dad, is that you?
They had replaced him with a lizard man. So anyway... David Mamet, great screenwriter, writes plays. Glengarry and Glenn Ross being probably.
What's your joke about Mamet plays? You have a very good bit.
There was a joke in that show Reboot that was a very good Mamet reference. But anyway,
sorry.
I honestly think that the man writes dialogue better than anyone else in film. It's
without a doubt, yes.
It's just in this perfect place of being natural and witty, and a lot of it obviously goes to the performances. You've got Dustin Hoffman and De Niro when he was still trying to act and not just be De Niro, and Anne Heche, and it's like it's almost this proto West Wing kind of pithiness to it and cadence, but it's just, man, it's a mile a minute. It's smart, but it never feels contrived. Like it's so just effortless. And again, that's it's the writing and the acting. So the whole crux of the story is this group of Firefly girls that are like younger than Girl Scouts, and one of them is alone in a back room of the Oval Office with President for like 3 minutes. It leaks, and they're like, they call in Robert De Niro, who later likens himself to a plumber, which, if you know anything about Watergate, is what they called the people that came in to fix things and broke into Watergate. They were the plumbers. So he's obviously a fixer. And so they start, he's like, okay, we got to get off the headlines because it's 11 days for the election. And he's like, we're going to start a war. And his whole contention is, we're going to manufacture a war on television and to distract from this sexual allegation and get us through the election. And so they call in Dustin Hoffman's character, because he's a movie producer, to help run the war.
Why Albania?
Why not?
They got to know at some point.
Who?
Who? The public.
They got to know?
Yes.
Stan, get with it. Who killed Kennedy? I read the first draft of the Warren report. It says he was killed by a drunk driver. You watch the Go For. What do you see day after day? The one smart bomb falling down the chimney. The truth? I was in the building when we shot that shot. We shot it in a studio, Falls Church, Virginia, 1/10 scale model of a building.
Is that true?
How the fuck do we know? You take my point?
Yes. All right. Okay. And you want me to do what?
We want you to produce.
You want me to produce your war?
Not a war. It's a pageant. We need a theme, a song, some visuals. We need, it's a pageant. It's like the Oscars. That's why we came to you.
I never won an Oscar.
And that's a damn shame you didn't. But you produced the Oscars.
Yes, indeed I did. You're a writer. That's your script. You're a director. What if you're the producer? What did you do? See, nobody knows what you do. The producer, all he's got is the credit. You see? Some plaques on the wall. They don't know what we do.
Stan.
Don't get me started.
And Dustin Hoffman said that he was playing his dad, but he was dressed like, what's his name? The kid stays in the picture.
What are you talking about?
Jason knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. The producer. Yeah. Robert
Evans.
Robert Evans. That's it.
Yeah. So he's dressed like Robert Evans. He's got the whole kind of look of Robert Evans.
The shades.
And yeah, like the whole time they're like, all right, it's like Albania. It's like, why are we going against war with Albania? He's like, you know anybody from Albania? And they're like, I don't know. Like somebody's like, Jim Belushi's from Albania. And later they like on the news, they interviewed Jim Belushi. It's so dark and biting, but essentially you never see the president in a good shot. You see him kind of from behind and far away, because it's all about these people, this group of like 4 or 5 people creating the perception and how they like trick people and how they leak stuff to the, because he keeps saying the president's in China when this is going on. It's like, I need a day. So he's staying in China because of the B-3 bomber. And they're like, there is no B-3 bomber. And he's like, exactly. There's not a B-3 bomber. And that's why he's in China. But you're not going to tell anybody that there's a B-3 bomber because there's not one. You need to deny that. And so they leak this denial of this B-3 bomber that doesn't exist. And Kirsten Dunst is cast as a refugee in Albania, like after this terrorist attack. And she has no idea that this is going to be real, and they make her sign an NDA and stuff like that. And Robert De Niro is like, you can never tell anybody that this happened. She's like, I can't put this on my resume. And he's like, no. She's like, well, what happened? And he's like, we'll kill you. They release this footage and everybody thinks it's real. And the whole time, Willie Nelson's like coming up with a song because they're going to do like a We Are the World kind of song. So like they're already preparing for the Toby Keith song to come out, right? Then the CIA stops them and is like, there's no war, because like there's this whole thing like the terrorists had stole a suitcase nuke and had snuck it into Canada. And William H. Macy's like the head of the CIA. He's like, no, this is not real. Robert De Niro's like, what do you mean? I saw it on television. He's like, well, we've got satellites, we've got all this stuff that says it. He goes, well, if it's not, if your satellites don't show it, then what good are you? He's like, if you want job security, you need to be prepared for the next threat. Otherwise if there's no war, there's no need for you.
The spy satellites show it, Mr. Breen. They show no war.
Then what good are they if they show no war? I mean, what are we spending $250 billion a year in the Defense Department? What good are they if they show nothing? And what, are they useless? Are they just broke or what? I mean, what is it?
I would like to point out further that these medications taken in
If
conjunction...
there's no threat, then where are you? Let me go you one more. If there's no threat, what good are you?
Mr. Breen, you are the threat.
I'm the threat. I am the threat. Well, what have I been doing the last 30 years that you haven't been doing? You want to fill me in on that?
The last 30 years, Mr. Breen, I have been working to ensure the security of my country.
As have we all, and I would
well
like to
of
point
you
out
and for
that
your
the security
parents.
of this country...
But if forced to choose between the security of your country and the security of your
country
job, which would you pick?
Not...
And while you hesitate, permit me to suggest that they are one and the same, your country and your job.
I'm doing my job, Mr. Breen. That's what you see me doing.
I'm doing my job,
What is it you are doing?
I'm
That's
doing
what I
my
would
job,
like to
too.
know.
And let me ask you something. Let me ask you a simple question. Why do people go to war? Why do they go to war?
I'll play your silly game.
Okay, why do they go to war?
To ensure their way of life.
Would you go to war to do that?
I have.
And if you went to war again, who would it be against? Huh? Your ability to fight a two-ocean war against who? Who? Sweden and Togo? That time is past. It's over. The war of the future is nuclear terrorism. It is, and it'll be against a small group of dissidents who, unbeknownst perhaps to their own governments, have blah, 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 blah. And to go to that war, you have to be prepared. You got to be alert. The public has got to be alert, because that is the war of the future. And if you're not gearing up to fight that war, then eventually the axe will fall, and you're going to be out in the street. And you could call this a drill, you could call this job security, you could call it anything you like. But I got one for you. You said go to war to preserve your way of life. Well, Chuck, this is your way of life. And if your spy satellites don't see nothing, if there ain't no war, then you can go home and prematurely take up golf, my friend. Because there ain't no war but ours.
So the CIA kind of goes along with it. But then they're watching the news, and there's this senator that's going up against the president in the election, played by Craig T. Nelson. And he's talking about negotiating peace with Albania, and the war's over. So now there is like an information war going on between these two sides about a war that never happened.
Oh, that's funny.
And
how have I never seen this movie?
So they're like it's over, and they decide they need a war hero. So they make up a story about this guy getting left behind, and Willie Nelson comes up with a song called like Good Old Shoe. And so they just find a guy in the army whose last name sounds like Shoe. And they start saying that he's left behind and stuff. And they make the recording and they press it to vinyl and put it in the Library of Congress and say it was like recorded like 1937, and then leaked like, oh, this reminds me of that song, Good Old Shoe. And so the guy becomes like this hero. We're doing it for Shoe. We got to get Shoe. You know, they release pictures where he's like torn Morse code in his shirt, and it says like I'm coming home, Mom, or something. And people start throwing. They go out and they throw shoes on trees and over like telephone lines and stuff. And so then people start doing it spontaneously, and they're like manufacturing this whole thing. And so they're like, it's coming up on the election. They're like, we got to produce Shoe. And so they get the guy who's played by Woody Harrelson, and he's like, in chains, and they're like, what is this? And they're like, this is the guy you wanted. He's been in Leavenworth for 12 years for raping a nun. And he's like medicated out, and they're on this private plane, and he's like just muttering to himself about, we having beans tonight. They don't put stuff in the beans. And they're like, oh shit. So the plane crashes, and they're trying to get, they're like, it's over. And the whole time, like, Dustin Hoffman's like, no, this is great. We can work with this.
I've seen bits of this. I can remember these scenes. Yeah.
Woody Harrelson goes off and like sees this woman. He goes to, rape her. And this guy comes in to save her, her husband. And it's all like, Dustin Hoffman's running, no, don't hurt him. And you hear, kapow. And Dustin Hoffman opens the door, and he goes, oh, he's okay. He's not dead. And you hear, kapow. And he's like, scratch that. So then they have to manufacture like how this guy died and like have a funeral for him and stuff. It's amazing, but it's like, it's a really, really black comedy, and it is very pessimistic. I think a year or two later is when the Monica Lewinsky scandal broke, and we ended up bombing
Kosovo.
I think it was Bosnia Herzegovina or something. And people were saying that
this
it was
is a
like
wag the dog.
this movie,
Yeah.
that they were manufacturing this to and so it's this really weird thing where all this stuff is kind of bleeding into each other.
Yeah.
It truly is wagging the dog. It's an amazing film. It is. You have to be at a point in your life where you're
cynical enough to watch it.
Right, cynical enough to, but not cynical enough where you're just like, yeah. But the movie ends with a shot of a TV, and there's breaking news about a terrorist retribution going on in Albania, right? And then the movie ends, and it's like you're left with, so did they end up causing a real war?
Right.
Or is this yet another fake thing, because all we're seeing is seeing it on television? It's like, it's really
false flag
really
operation.
Good. Yeah.
The plot to the John Grisham book, The Brethren, has a lot of elements of that same, sex scandal, political candidate, CIA puppet, manufactured war, the whole shebang. Like it's, although that sounds, I know you have strong feelings about John Grisham, but
I don't really have strong feelings about him. I'm like 1 degree separated from him.
Okay, maybe that's. I know there's something about you and John Grisham. I guess that's what I should say.
I don't like the movies that they make on this stuff. But I would have 2 beers with John Grisham and shoot a dog with him, or whatever you said.
All right, Dick Cheney.
2 beers and an old yellow, right?
That right there is our relationship. I'd beat a horse to death with you, Josh.
I'd put a roadkill bear in the car with you and
drop it off in Central Park.
Like, how can you even write a movie about that?
We're in the hinterlands, I'll tell you that.
I would say also that we'd mentioned before, Roger Moore's Canadian Bacon is kind of like the same plot.
It really is.
It's a manufactured war coming up to an election
against Canada.
Yes.
So one of the funniest things is the motto is let our hostages go or we'll bomb Toronto. It's so stupid, but it's like, that's exactly what would happen. Yeah, but the fact that there was like they had this whole campaign, and then like when I was watching it, like when Willie Nelson's trying to think, he's like, "What rhymes with Albania?" But I kept thinking of post 9/11 and like Toby Keith, man, and courtesy of the red, white, and blue, like totally exploitive of a national tragedy.
Yeah.
But that's the MO, because also like during their first Gulf War, was it Styx that did the song "Show Me the Way"?
Yeah,
they would play that on the radio at night, and they would have like people. This is Sergeant Billingsworth from Mobile, Alabama. I want to say hi to my wife, and like you hear bombs in the background.
They do
and
that.
stuff.
They did that during Iraq and stuff too, in Afghanistan. On like the not whatever the Casey Kasem of that era was. That was like
Casey Kasem.
Yeah, but it was like. It was always on the same...
Rick Stevens or something?
No,
Rick Stevens?
I can't remember. But it was always on the same...
Rick Dees, you mean?
Rick Dees, there you go.
The same station
Rick
they played
Dees.
Delilah on, like the Pop 40 and stuff. But and the country, Top 40 country usually is where I hear that. But US 101, got niggas on.
So before we close out... I'm sure that Adam has something to say about his favorite television show that he never gets tired of whinging on about. This is his one opportunity. It's the Ridley Scott of his television shows.
Cool. So
Tell us about the West Wing.
So the Big Bang Theory is this really great...
Cut to black.
It's like The Sopranos. You don't even hear it coming. It's
just use that shotgun sound effect you were talking about earlier.
So it is. I mean, it is one of my favorite TV shows. It is one of my go-to, kind of put on the background watches. Only the first 5 seasons are really good. I mean, all of it's collectively good. But yeah, Aaron Sorkin's works. I know a lot of people like everything he does, like The Newsroom and other stuff. I'm not that. I'm not a guy who likes everything he does. I really only just like The West Wing of his sort of panthology of work. But I started watching that sort of like you were, how you were like, you said you were an apathetic college political guy. I was the complete reverse of that. I was a huge politics nerd, and I absolutely just loved it. And the show was doing new stuff it's the tail end of the show. It was doing new stuff. Right? Actually, it was really the early stages of when I was kind of coming of age. And so I kind of watched it in real time as I was interested in politics and all these. Mm-hmm. It was this idealized version of what I thought politics, even everybody seemed reasonable, right? The Republicans were reasonable. The Democrats were reasonable. Their arguments were fair. They had major disagreements, but they, and there was dirty politics in there for sure. And, bad things happened or whatever. But at the end of the day, most people looked like they wanted to do what they thought was right, not vengeance. And that was kind of how I, when I was in my early days, I thought I was going to be a politician, and that's what I was aspiring to. I wanted to be that in that world.
Well, this podcast has totally closed those doors for you forever.
Those doors were closed long before this podcast. Look, man, I got
the bodies in the forest.
I don't got skeletons in closets. I got houses full of skeletons. I got whole graveyards.
What's funny about West Wing is if satire is biting enough, it can really turn me off of something. So it's dangerous for me to get into satire, good satire, because we've talked about the family. Now I don't watch Family Guy after the South Park skewered them.
Right.
It's just instantly
it broke it for you.
It's like when you see the pattern, you're like, yeah, this is. So 30 Rock has Aaron Sorkin on an episode, and they do the walk and talk, and they walk in the circle around the set, end up in the same place. And I was like,
"Oh, buddy, there's a ton of them." And if you've watched West Wing as many times as I have, there's a ton of things that now I do have to kind of turn my brain off a little. For example, they do this thing. I don't want to ruin it for other people almost, but because I know a lot of people still really enjoy this as one of their shows, but. There's this thing they do where they'll walk into a room, they'll say, did you get that report from the EEOB? And the character they're talking to they'll be very engaged in something. They'll go, sorry, what'd you say? And then they'll repeat the line. And there's this repeating of the line bit that happens 6 times every episode. That's a thing that the repetition of the same line over and over, it drives me nuts.
That's called the Teletubbies strategy of screenwriting. Just show it again.
I was looking at something on IMDb. What were you saying?
Exactly. But the reason I wanted to mention this specifically is because we're talking about elections. There is a story arc where Bartlett is going to run for re-election. He makes the decision as a season cliffhanger to run for the next election. This is like season 2 or 3. And it was unclear the will he or won't he is the will he run again. And this is after his MS diagnosis. And there's this really poignant scene where he's coming in out of the rain and he basically announces that, and the following season of where it's the election season is probably some of the best television I've ever watched. I just love it. And to your point about like, it was on live, or not on live, but it was actively recorded during like, the events like 9/11 and all this stuff. And the way they tackled those with like real communication, like real issues, like explanatory issues of things. It's just smart TV. And I always appreciated, like, even when I didn't agree with him politically, which is a lot of the time, I appreciated the discourse, I guess. And there's not a lot of that even now that I think's, and it was idealized. Like, there's no doubt about like that could never ever happen. Like that type of presidency could never ever happen. A lot of people like to think that like a lot of people who wrote for the show ended up working in the Obama administration. They wanted to claim that it was like that, but the realities are no, it was not like that. Right. Like, it's not, no.
What are you going to say?
Right.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was really hard work, right. And it's awful.
But, here's the thing. Politics sucks today. It doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. I think everybody would have said that. I don't think there's a human in America who's like, boy, I just love this. I love the way this made me feel. This whole election cycle was just like great. It was like the Super Bowl halftime show the whole time. I just loved it. Politics sucks, but that show did a fantastic job of talking about serious issues in an entertaining and informative way that did not make me feel like crap after I watched it.
Like The Good Place did with philosophy.
Yes, that's a great example. Yeah.
I know. That's why I said it.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate you reading the note that I wrote about The Good Place in philosophy. But I'll let you have the credit for it.
To quote Dustin Hoffman from Wag the Dog, I just wanted credit.
That's right. It ran, I think, a little long. The arc of Jeb, and when they start focusing on like the new candidate and president that's running, that's where it kind of gets off the rails for me. But the early seasons where they're really showing how like politics works and how it's made, I don't know. I have a soft spot in my heart for it. So it's a high note to end on, in my opinion.
Yeah,
so.
we covered a lot of ground. And may you live in interesting times so you can watch interesting movies.
Yeah.
It's like Martin Scorsese said, somebody asked him if he had any advice for young filmmakers. He said, go live, don't study film, study life, then make films. So good talk, guys. Yeah, man. So if you're still awake, or listening, sorry,
our deepest condolences.
We're still trying to hit that cure for insomnia for you.
To dulcet tones.
Adam, if someone wanted to reach out to us with their opinion, or just to tell us how wonderful we are, because I would like to hear that one day. My children don't tell me.
It'll never, ever happen. If they wanted to vote for us, they can cast their ballots by going to brickpit@gmail.com, or if they want to find how to contact us in other places, they can go to linktree/brickpit, where they can find us on social media and leave us comments there.